Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar titled The State of Smart Manufacturing, Today's Challenges and Tomorrow's Opportunities for Manufacturers. Presented by Plex Systems and hosted by Metal Forming Magazine and the Precision Metal Forming Association. My name is Brad Kuvan. I'm the editorial director at Metal Forming and I'm pleased to serve as your moderator today. Before we get started, just a few notes about today's go-to meeting. This meeting is being recorded for archiving, and the recorded event will be posted to our website within the next day or two. We'll let you know via email when the recording is available so that you can view it online and share it with others. Also, all participants in this meeting are in listen-only mode. That means that the speaker and other listeners will not be able to hear any audio from your site during the program. However, you do have the ability to communicate with us throughout the program by submitting your questions and comments using the question box located on that right-hand control panel on your go-to screen. Simply type your question to an organizer as selected from the drop-down menu. You'll also use that same question panel to ask questions of our speakers at the end of the presentation. So we'll go ahead and begin today's webinar. Plex Systems, in collaboration with Hanover Research, recently released its 6th annual State of Smart Manufacturing report. This study explores how manufacturers use technology to address today's challenges and to also take advantage of long-term opportunities. The data reveal a clear need for smart manufacturing technology to address current challenges, especially those created or heightened by the pandemic. Our speakers today are Michael Hart, Director of Product Strategy, Manufacturing and Industrial IoT at Plex Systems, and Tarek Falah, Vice President of Information Technology, Information Systems at Creative Foam Corporation. In his role at Plex, Mike Hart analyzes industry challenges and addresses them through product innovation, helping manufacturers leverage the latest connected technologies to achieve efficient, agile, and automated operations. Mike has more than 20 years of experience in the cloud software industry. And Mike is joined by Tarek Falah, who's an accomplished technology strategist with more than 25 years of experience across numerous industries. During his career, Tarek has been tasked with prioritizing digital transformations for many organizations, delivering leadership while navigating complex and challenging projects. So without further ado, we'll hand it off to Mike Hart to kick things off.
Excellent. And thank you for that introduction. I really appreciate everybody's time today, and I am incredibly excited to share some of the insights we've gathered, and more importantly, though, to have Tarek here joining me to share his experience around driving technology adoption at Creative Foam. Our backdrop, as you heard today, today's discussion is all about the 6th annual State of Smart Manufacturing report. And today we're going to go through those 3 key findings from the report. But probably most importantly, I'm going to put Tarek on the spot a bit here and have a discussion around his experience at Creative Foam. Before we do that, Tarek, I thought it made sense before we get started here, if you could just give a little context around your organization, Creative Foam, to help give everybody a bit of context around the organization.
Sure. Thanks, Mike, and appreciate everybody joining. This is really exciting for me to be able to share some of my experience with this. And I think this report highlights some really great trends and some really exciting things for everyone to take note of. So as a quick explainer for Creative Foam, I am the Vice President of Information Technology, Information Systems. And Creative Foam is a manufacturing organization with over 52 years of experience. And we specialize in manufacturing within the transportation space, specifically with automotive, doing things with nonwovens, adhesives, but also in the healthcare space, medical devices, personal care products, athletics, those type of things, compressions, wraps, all those kinds of wearables that you may see. And we also have some space within the wind energy market, where we actually manufacture the blades for the wind turbines that are manufactured out of foam. We put those together through kits and ship them off and then put them back together. So anytime you drive down the road and you see those wind turbines, there's a pretty good chance we had something to do with that. So that's who we are today.
Excellent. I appreciate that context for everybody here. So With that, let's take a quick look at the report itself. As we mentioned, this is the 6th annual State of Manufacturing report. And as many of you know, this report has evolved quite a bit over the years. Initially, it started out as a survey to our customers, but over time, as interest has grew, it's really grown into an excellent resource that hopefully everybody here can leverage. This year, we collaborated with Hanover Research, where we surveyed over 7 industries with the goal to really get a comprehensive state of smart manufacturing from industries as a whole. It's important to note those surveyed are not Plex customers. So today, we're going to just step through those 3 key findings we captured within the state of smart manufacturing. To start, here's the definition of smart manufacturing we used as we conducted the survey. This may look familiar to you because it's the definition as it's defined by MESA. And if you're familiar with Plex, this is also the definition we use to base a lot of our material around. Now, the report itself is structured all around those 3 key findings. The first key finding is the adoption of smart manufacturing is increasing. So we found attitudes are generally positive and optimistic as we surveyed those. And you kind of see there at the bottom, the big stat at the bottom there, that highlights the fact that 80% of respondents believe smart manufacturing is going to be a key to their success. The second takeaway is the current business challenges they are facing are creating an even greater need for smart manufacturing. There, you'll see there is a very key alignment between the challenges they're facing and the technology needs they've identified for the future. And then finally, the third key finding is smart manufacturing can help maximize the future growth opportunities. It's very clear as we walk through the data that manufacturers are realizing the technology and realizing that it's almost a must from the technology standpoint. And the end of the report starts to focus on how they're looking at their business to realize their full potential. So let's dig into that first key finding, focused on the adoption of smart manufacturing technology. But before we do, I wanted to take a quick poll to better understand the extent of smart manufacturing technology as it's being used in everybody's organization here on the phone. So if you could take a few seconds here to pick the answer. Excellent. We'll start to gather that data there, and we'll talk about it here in a little bit. So let me walk you through the data point that supports our first key finding. As you see here, you can see how the adoption curve continues to grow with over a third already adopting smart manufacturing technology. The real exciting data point is the fact that 40% are actively evaluating solutions with the intentions to invest. And although not really shown here, one very interesting takeaway that we'll talk about here in a minute is all around the automotive sector. And the answers show that they're a little bit behind the adoption of other industries. And although they're lagging in the terms of the adoption, the automotive sector had the highest percentage of companies actively evaluating solutions. As we look at the adoption story, you can see it highlights a sense of urgency. Here you see over 60% of those surveyed are looking to adopt this type of technology this year. And nearly 90% are focused on deploying solutions within the next 24 months. So I think this really starts to highlight the sense of urgency we're seeing within the industry. Now, if we turn our attention to the role cloud plays, it also shows some interesting insights. Here we see over 90% of those surveyed will have solutions in the cloud. Now, this does include solutions like CRM and business intelligence, but we gave them a lot of different options, which included things like MES and quality and IoT. But what I think it does reflect is the attitude towards cloud has certainly shifted over the years. With cloud adoption becoming more mainstream today, this is certainly laying a foundation for smart manufacturing. Finally, you can see here how manufacturers are leveraging technology within their organizations to support key operational activities. As you see at the top, 70% connecting people and systems together, tracking data, automating processes to improve that overall performance, right? One thing that you'll see is 58% indicated they are tracking plant floor production data. Now, it's no surprise that they're beginning with connecting corporate data and maybe haven't yet reached down to connecting to the shop floor. So certainly an opportunity for additional improvement and additional spread. As I alluded to earlier, here you can see how the automotive manufacturers are lagging a bit behind other industries as in terms of adoption. But I think that said, I believe that this is in part due to how automotive manufacturers really look at smart technology and potentially may not be giving themselves the full credit they deserve. You know, looking back at previous years, it's clear all industries are continuing to make those investments in adoption of the smart manufacturing technology. So, as you know, I'm joined with Tarek from Creative Foam. And Tarek, I was hoping you could give everyone a better understanding of your experience. Maybe we can start out with a bit of perspective into the processes at Creative Foam and how you look at and you look for opportunities to invest in technology. So can you give us a viewpoint of how you look at potential opportunities?
Yeah, sure. So, there's obviously a few approaches for how to begin with either evaluating or actually adopting processes or technologies within the organization. For us, we typically look at use cases, which they may be simple, low-hanging fruit, something that offers some excellent ROI without a huge investment or a significant process change. I kind of believe that with technological changes, as true with any kind of change, it's a much simpler and safer road to find those smaller use cases where you can kind of demonstrate the overall value. It's kind of a sandbox opportunity for the organization to get in, try it out, get familiar with it, and sort of plan that long-term roadmap. And that's how we approach it, is to kind of take smaller steps, find those things where we can prove this out, where we can demonstrate to the organization, this is where the value is, this is how we can derive gains throughout the organization by doing this.
Yeah, that makes sense. And maybe I should have asked this question first, but where does Creative Foam fall on the adoption curve you just saw there as we reviewed?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as you mentioned, obviously we have a large footprint within automotive, and I would certainly speak to your clear indicator there that there is some type of lag that goes on with automotive. We are probably at a pretty good range in terms of adoption. We've gone through some of those small use cases. We've purchased hardware, we've invested in training and improving our workforce, and we're now defining long-term, where do we go? What do we look like in 5 years? How do we grow with our customers? How do we improve our processes so that we're not lagging behind, we're up to speed with them. So I would say we're sort of in that middle part of the adoption phase where we've found the low-hanging fruit, we've proved this out, now we're kind of planning for the future.
Yeah, that makes sense. And as you mentioned, there's often just getting started is one of those biggest challenges, right? And there's a handful of different challenges that go with that, along with how do you take something that could be a very complex challenge and go solve maybe a piece of that, but there's others, right? And so I'm curious to better understand, like, what's some of those key takeaways? Certainly you cited the ability to break it down into smaller kind of use cases, but what other key takeaways in terms of adoption do you have?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a critical element of any successful adoption strategy, really, but specifically for smart manufacturing, is realizing that this is really a major enterprise-wide change. It needs proper support throughout, from the top all the way down. Opportunities for implementation, they can come from the top, from the bottom, but if it comes from the shop floor and there's a need identified, you've got to have that support from the top as well to say, yes, we see it, we're willing to invest in this strategy. In other cases, you may have top level leadership that identify a need to introduce smart manufacturing, but it needs the support downstream to have the right employees that are hired, that are trained, the infrastructure put together the way it needs to be put together. So in either case of however these use cases are defined and however they're pushed, you've got to have that kind of support, not only from the top level, but all the way down to that process to make sure that you get maximum value out of the smart manufacturing elements.
Yeah, that's helpful. And it certainly sounds like you've had the support of that upper management, right? And everybody has barriers. Some come from various change management aspects, which actually, a little foresight into the rest of today's conversation, we're going to dig a little bit into that. But, as it comes to often selling it to upper management, right? New technology, new promise of the future, right? It sounds like you've been able to overcome that or have the support of upper management. How did that go? Was it something that they led from the top down? Was there convincing that was necessary? I mean, what did that look like to get the upper management buy-in at your organization?
Yeah, I think we were lucky in that we had support not only from the top, but also from the shop floor. We had a really great workforce that sees the value in improving processes, because one of the things that takes place is there's a fear, especially with automotive, that by introducing things like smart manufacturing, automation, machine learning, that we're reducing the workforce, or we're eliminating jobs or something like that. And the reality is simply that that's not what's taking place. We're looking to utilize the workforce we have to provide additional skills. We're looking to invest in those employees we have today, and also the employees that we want to have tomorrow, to make sure that we're adding value to these people's work experiences. And I think once management really saw that that's what we're doing, is we're building what we have today, we're making the workforce more efficient, and we can demonstrate that value, not just this is savings from a process, or this is a minimal investment. We were able to demonstrate that we have more effective employees who are doing more in these processes. So it was a win-win all the way through for us to be able to have that demonstrated.
Yeah, I can only imagine breaking that complex issue up down into something that's less scary, right? Easier to implement, easier to go tackle, starts to build the confidence within the organization. So maybe one last question here in this section is any particular advice that you would give companies who are starting to look at and evaluate different technologies? Obviously, there's a lot of buzzwords out in the industry, a lot of different solutions, a lot of competitive space. How did you navigate that, and how did you evaluate different technologies?
Yeah, if I were going to point to one piece of advice simply, it would be to realize for all organizations that this is not an on-off kind of a switch. Smart manufacturing isn't something that you enter into and suddenly it's going and then you're done at one day. As I mentioned before, there are many opportunities to get into different avenues where you can make small investments over time, trial the potential use case, see what kind of value you get out of it. there's some excellent opportunities to work with customers, suppliers, try to find those areas where it's a win-win for both parties and where both parties are willing to invest, or perhaps they all, customers may have already invested and they're waiting for you to jump on board. So it's not something which gets done in one moment of time. This is really something that's a continuous improvement opportunity as you move ahead into the future of manufacturing.
No, that's excellent insight. Thank you. And maybe before we jump into the next topic, let's see how the group responded to that, their experience around the adoption journey. Yeah, so currently a lot of interest. Again, we see some similarities there around interest and evaluating solution being taken the major precedence there, and even some that are already fully integrated. So excellent. That's great stuff. So let's dig into the next key finding, and this is really focused on the effect market conditions have had on adoption. But before we do, let's take another quick survey for the group to better understand, how COVID-19 affected your workforce over the last year plus. Guessing this one's going to be a pretty easy question for the group. I'll give you a couple seconds to fill that. Awesome. All right, let's go ahead and push forward. So I think I'm like many of us here, simply glad 2020 is over. The COVID pandemic has created hardships, challenges in businesses, and certainly challenges with families. And not to make light of any situation, I think we all can agree on it's certainly one of those kind of 1 star out of 5 type of reviews. But with that said, often opportunities come in the wake of challenge, right? And I must say, looking at the application of technology to help solve business challenges, it's clear today more than ever before that there's an opportunity for us to leverage technology. So it comes probably at no surprise that COVID-19 has made a serious impact on the manufacturing sector. And those surveyed cited a significant reduction in workforce due to that pandemic. Workforce that we already know was well stressed. So as you can see here, the expectation of smart manufacturing is to really do more with less, essentially increasing efficiency with that smaller workforce. Now, we did ask manufacturers what obstacles are affecting your growth. And this is one of those questions where they could list, all that apply. Not surprisingly, COVID-19 pandemic had one of the largest impacts and bubbled to the top of that. But in addition, they cited other challenges like the supply chain disruptions kind of leading into obstacles they were facing. So then a follow-up question asked how COVID-19 is affecting their organization and what changes have the organization implemented to cope with this disruption. So you can see here the top 4 responses, right? Developing a contingency plans for, that widespread disruption. Things like creating a more agile supply chain, reprioritizing the investments, and then, not surprisingly, but they're focused on that whole our efforts to be able to increase efficiencies across the organization. So then we took it, one step further, right? How has COVID-19 increased the need for smart technology? And the effects on that already challenged workforce is driving the need for increased efficiencies. Now, I think one interesting area is the drive to cloud technologies, really supporting a more dispersed workforce. And ultimately, you can draw a clear line from the impact of COVID-19 the need to smart technologies. Now I'd like to drill one more step down and think about it from an automotive sector. And you can see here the top areas manufacturers in the automotive industry are looking to invest. In particular, I thought it was interesting that the use of automation, the use of automation to combat and provide a more efficient and ultimately a more nimble workforce that can do more with the challenges they have today. So I think I'm going to come up for air here again, and once again get Tarek's viewpoint on the market conditions facing creative foam. And Tarek, I'm guessing creative foam, like many of us, wasn't spared at the fate of COVID-19. So can you give everybody here maybe a little insight on how COVID-19 affected your business?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like most others, I would expect when we look at the results, maybe there's a few lucky attendees that didn't have it impact them, but certainly we felt the impact of COVID. We had a reduced workforce, a reduced need for parts from all of our customers. We had supply chain disruptions, everything that all of us probably have felt to some degree. And so it's provided that kind of a chaotic landscape that has been one we've met with challenges, but also it's been met with opportunities. We've been able to realize new businesses. Last year we pivoted pretty hard. Where automotive had slowed down, we decided to pivot into healthcare and transition some of our manufacturing there to be able to utilize the machinery that we already have, but to produce new products where we could positively affect the healthcare landscape. So we made that adjustment. And we've been able to find new ways of doing business. It's helped us to force us to kind of be more adaptable, which in reality hasn't really been a bad thing. We've been able to shift how we work, how we realize what remote work might mean for our workforce, how we can enable that workforce to do more, and how we can leverage the platform we have within Plex to be more efficient and more nimble ultimately.
Yeah, that's interesting. Often in the face of those challenges, opportunities arise, right? And you spoke about one of them as just new opportunities into adjacent industries. But what are some of the things maybe internal to Creative Foam that are opportunities that maybe didn't exist a few years back? Like, how are you solving it and leveraging technology today that maybe you didn't a few years back?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you mentioned kind of that overall doing more with less now, and I think that presents itself as a solution in terms of automation, whether it's automation with machinery, whether it's automation with truly artificial intelligence or something like that. It's opened up that perspective of us where we need to be more nimble with what we have, and also we need to be quick to market with what we're going to market with. Those that are able to move very quickly and very rapidly obviously are going to be more successful with their customers. And so while we have this stressed kind of from the pandemic with our workforce, we've got to find new ways to adapt. And so we've introduced automation into our processes to help us with that. We have automated data flowing throughout our systems, giving us insights in real time. We're working with our customers to leverage things like RFID so that we can get more efficiency throughout, whether it's just internally at our plants or with our customers and suppliers.
No, it's excellent. And, it's interesting because you start to mirror some of the survey aspects of things. And I'm guessing the ability from an automation side of things gave you certainly the opportunity to improve efficiencies. But, are there other areas where you realize benefits as part of those efforts outside of just pure efficiencies?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously we saw the efficiency as you're mentioning, but we also saw some other areas where we had some very positive improvement. Through some of our integrations with our shop floor machinery and with Plex, we were able to have a 90% improvement in material accuracy. So a reduction in material loss and an increase in production reporting accuracy. So we have full integration with automatic record production, quality, where we're having check sheets if they're not complete, stopping the line and preventing those errors from going down. Automated updates throughout the system when a part moves through, labels that are printed automatically if we have parts where there's an exception. So it's given us that ability to take our workforce and, again, do more with less. Take that workforce we have today, make them work smarter, not necessarily harder.
No, that's awesome. And sounds like there's a couple of use cases in there. We might have to follow up down the road here. But I'm curious, when you put, you mentioned a little bit about operators and resistance to change a little bit. But, often when you put technology out there, ask them to do something a little bit different, you may get, some resistance. How did you see the operators on your shop floor react to new technology?
I think it's natural for them to have hesitation, which they did. There's hesitation, again, as I mentioned, that as you introduce this technology, as you make these kinds of changes, that what does that mean long-term for my job, for the rest of this team? And there was that hesitation. But I think once they saw that our efforts really to drive accuracy and to help them be more effective at doing the job they already have, then I think they were very positive, because in the long run, we're looking at reducing errors, we're looking at allowing efficiencies to be gained throughout the process that they're very involved in. So once they were able to get through that, once they had the training that they needed, and some also overall perspective of what's happening, then they became very positive and were supporters of the changes we were making.
Yeah, you talked about some of the buy-in from upper management, right? And then being able to tie somebody down in the floor to measure success that gets felt all the way up to the top floor, right? That has a huge impact to everybody's kind of well-being. But how were you measuring success, and maybe how the executive team's measuring success for these types of projects?
Yeah, ultimately, we're looking at a return on our investment. So with smart manufacturing that involves technology, there is some level of investment there. So it's critical for us that as we set up these use cases, we can go in and say, what is our goal? Are we trying to, reduce time spent? Are we trying to remove errors or reduce errors and improve accuracy? So we would establish those goals and really analyze them as we go through the project and make sure that kind of that end result is justifying that initial upfront investment. In every case we've had so far, it definitely has been. It's easy to realize that success when you set up a use case that's well defined, has some pretty good inputs and outputs so that you can bound that data within it.
Yeah, well, and certainly there's lots of opportunities, right? Lots of opportunities exist, and nobody's really end on this journey, right? And you get started down the journey, and you just continue to look for opportunities to leverage technology. And I'd say it becomes easier and easier over the time, and maybe the technology changes and gets a little bit more in-depthful, but you're never at that end of the journey and done, right? So I'm curious, what are the next steps for you? What are you planning to take next and adopt additional technology to go solve?
Sure. As I mentioned, we started kind of on that path of the basic low-hanging fruit. As we go forward, we're looking at artificial intelligence. We're looking at machine learning. We're looking at, how do we have more insights into the data points that will give us more information and help us make better decisions throughout our process, all the way from the initial sales and forecasting all the way down to quality.
Well, that's excellent. Okay. Well, hey, based on this section, again, we took a quick survey. I'm curious to see the results. Let's pop those up and see if we can. All right. Yeah. So, wow, there's a handful of people that weren't affected. That's awesome to see. That makes me feel better. But unfortunately, a big part of us still fit in that 90 plus kind of side of things. All right. So let's dig into our last finding from the survey, and that's the opportunity to leverage smart technology to power tomorrow's growth. So, before we do, again, we got one last survey question for the group. And this question is all around the barriers to adoption and what you see as the biggest challenges for your organization. So we got a handful there. Often one that comes top of mind is cost, but technology skills, certainly the resistance to change we see from the operators or the assumptions, and I think the last one's kind of just what is smart manufacturing? How do I go leverage it, right? And better understanding that. Give you a couple more seconds here to pick an answer. And then we'll go ahead and jump forward. Yeah, so in this section here, we take a closer look at making the smart manufacturing a reality. It's clear the interest and the focus is there. So what's holding us back from taking advantage of the capabilities? And here you see we asked what are the top barriers to adoption? And so with no surprise, cost and expense ranked top among that list. But interestingly, 32% cited a lack of defined value. So I think one thing's really clear. It's a clear takeaway is when value is not clearly understood by the organization, the cost of whatever technology it is going to be perceived extremely high. So here we dug into a viewpoint specific to automotive, where, as you can see, it mirrors much of the industry, but has a small twist to it. In particular, the lack of skilled workers and the resistance to change continued to be a barrier within this sector, driving the importance to define projects that provide that on-ramp that Tarek was talking about. Often making it far less complicated to get yourself started, get some traction, get some confidence as an organization, and get some value, some quick return on investment associated to adopting this type of technology. So here is a few of those less complicated use cases that can drive value within an organization in really tangible ways. Now, they focus in on business challenges that are grouped in one of the three main areas, around potentially inventory or production or quality. And these can often give a layer of focus to identify those solutions that have a lower barrier of investment, but they can still provide significant gains within an organization. So you got things like, can I install a QMS, quality management system? What benefits can I capture and realize from connecting data directly off my machine and doing machine integration capabilities, potentially for automation purposes, like Tarek's case? And then finally, industrial IoT, right? That's a bit of a buzzword, right? But leveraging that connectivity, potentially connecting to additional sensors and information around the process to start to monitor things like asset health and other things that may be affecting the manufacturing. Now, going back a little bit to those barriers to adoption, 3 of those top 5 barriers were around workforce challenges. There are certainly opportunities to combat those challenges through various implementation approach. Things like involving the skeptics early on. Often these skeptics are the key users within the company, and they can help that transition, make it smoother. And if you get them engaged as part of the solution, they can be kind of the gatekeepers for helping roll it out. There are others, though, like thinking about how to attract the next generation of workers by improving the technology. And then finally, potentially engaging partners that may be well equipped to help an organization navigate the operational change management that's often necessary with this type of project. So we round out this last section with the questions about what's driving growth in your organization. It was really interesting to see that nearly 50% said new software deployments are driving the growth. So it's clear manufacturers are no longer seeing software as a necessary evil, but seeing it as something that can support their business initiatives. And on the left, this lists the areas for where they're seeing those largest impact from software solutions being deployed. And so as I round out this area, I wanted to note that you can gain access to this report directly from the Plex website, from plex.com. And although we don't have time today, there's another great component of the report where it provides some clear guidance on how your organization can start to take action now. So to that point, the report highlights some clear steps on how to get started in the journey or things you may consider as you navigate adoption. Eric, I'm curious, Creative Foam has obviously got over that hump of investment. However, as we see here earlier in the discussion, cost and expense is a major barrier. Can you describe how your organization looks at investments and maybe what does the approval process look like and what do they have to install to be able to gain the flexibility necessary to go experiment, right, with new technology, but understand when to cut that off and when to continue the investment?
Yeah, I would first say that, again, it's important to understand that getting into smart manufacturing and making that kind of an investment, it doesn't have to be an all-in or all-out experience, and you can start very simple. The investment up front can be very minimal to get your foot in the door, to start introducing some of these elements and to see where it would fit in. So, we look at establishing what the positive gain would be. Is it purely dollar and cents? Is it a customer requirement? Is it process improvement? And then once we understand that and establish what the reason for the why, then we can establish, how are we going to measure the success? How are we going to measure if this is an improvement for us? What is it that it's important for us, and that we're not just layering on more technology? We have to make sure that at the end of the day, we've got to win. So it really means bringing everyone to the table, establishing our goals, establishing what the investment is, and what we want to get out of this at the end of it.
You mentioned their customer expectations, right? And customers can drive technology investments. Maybe tell me more. What does that look like for you? And are you seeing your customers specifically prescribe a certain technology, or what's it look like from that standpoint and that interaction point?
Absolutely. Our customers are going forward with technology every single day, and it's imperative that we not only stay and try to match up with them, but that we try to think ahead and see where they're going so that we can make those investments up front, because the sooner that we can have parity between ourselves and our customers, the better our relationship is going to be. So customers are expecting us right now to follow suit with whatever technology improvements they're implementing. For example, with RFID, that's something that's becoming very commonplace for our customers, and it's becoming a requirement that's just being passed on. So when you fall in line with those customer requirements and you're not a burden in their process, then overall you're going to be much more successful, down the road with them.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting. So maybe turning my attention back to the adoption piece, right? Because that was a big part of this around just barriers to it. So, culture of an organization often plays a huge role. How did you see that play out at Creative Foam? How did the culture of your organization alter any of the decisions you guys needed to make?
Yeah, and I alluded to it previously, but again, it's important to have that kind of philosophy from the top down, that when you go forward with something, you're making that investment, you get the buy-in, and you get everybody to realize the overall reason why you're doing this. What is the positive gain? But the culture for our organization has been one, thankfully, where we're very focused on building to the future, ensuring that we are constantly establishing a roadmap that not only gives us value internally, but gives us valuable long-term for our customers. We're positive in terms of looking at ways to effectively net value. Just because it may not be, a bottom line savings or another dollar that we're getting from a customer, if we can save $1 on the plant floor because we're more efficient with our processes or we're enabling our workforce to do more, then we're absolutely, helping bolster what's coming in from the top line. So it's critical for us and for any organization to understand that these kind of investments aren't just there to use the latest and greatest technology or to follow some kind of perceived trend. There really is a path to getting to the future and being more successful.
Yeah, that's excellent. I guess I got one last question. We talked about it a bit before, breaking things up, but often just knowing where to start is the biggest challenge. What recommendations do you have for organizations looking to take action?
Yeah, I think, and I kind of spoke about it before, but it's finding some of that low-hanging fruit. I think for us, and maybe it kind of harkens to my manufacturing shop floor experience, but I use the term Genshi Genbutsu, where it's, that translates to go to where the action takes place. Go on the shop floor, find those places where you can latch on and prove something out simply. You can start very, very small. It doesn't have to be, a massive investment. You can find something where you can demonstrate how this technology can work. You can start with just one area of the facility and isolate it and prove it out very well. That small incremental change established over a pattern and given enough time can really have the same effect and be done safely with predefined parameters rather than just one tidal wave of change. It can be just as effective.
Yeah, I love that approach. And we've seen from a Plex perspective, the companies that engage workers on the shop floor really capture a ton of success and momentum here because who's better equipped to explain where is that low hanging fruit than the person having to manage the process on a day in day out basis, right? And so being able to capture that feedback from those associates on the shop floor can be extreme amount of value. And then the technology adoption just becomes a tool to help solve challenges that they've communicated back to the organization, right? So I love the approach you've taken.
Absolutely, yeah, very true.
So on behalf of everyone here, I'd certainly like to thank you for sharing the virtual stage, if you will, here today with me and sharing your experience with the entire group. As we look to wrap up, though, let's take a look at that last poll on what the group's feedback was on barriers to adoption. So great to see that lack of technical skills doesn't seem to be the real piece of it, but a bit of challenge there around the resistance to change, and I think the last one there of the defined value to the cost start to go hand in hand, right? So probably key takeaway there again is if we can't articulate or find the true value to it, cost is certainly going to be a huge barrier for success. Excellent. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to turn it back over to the group and certainly open it up for discussion for any Q&A that may have came in or how we want to handle that.
Thanks, Mike and Tarek. Excellent. Well done. We do have some time for questions. We got about 10 minutes left, so go ahead if you've got questions for these guys while we have them. Go ahead and type your questions into that question box on the control panel. First question we have, guys, and Mike, maybe you can speak to this in general, and maybe Tarek, you've got some experience on not just smart manufacturing on the plant floor, but you hear about smart office as well, and companies looking to integrate some of this technology into their office procedures. Are you seeing much of that, Mike, from your customers? And Tarek, are you looking to integrate kind of back office data into your smart concept?
Yeah, maybe I kick it off and turn it over to Tarek for practical use cases. But absolutely, I think this extends that automation concept associated to, from if you will, the first mile from the actual machines and capabilities on the shop floor all the way up to providing data. And today, often when you go tour a facility, you see that data gets stuck and siloed within the organization someplace, often in a computer that's tucked away in the backside of the plant. So being able to get that data up and integrated to office and decisions made at that office level across the entire supply chain has a huge amount of value, and is certainly where we see opportunities exist. And then outside of that, leveraging again the connectivity to bringing the smartness associated to the entire supply chain. So being able to connect out from your own four walls out to potentially your suppliers and your customers to share that amount of data.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the key there is the visibility of data is critical to success. So finding those data points, bringing them out, integrating them into one platform is very, very valuable. The more you have in front of you that you can utilize and have real-time access to, the more successful you're going to be. So absolutely, we've seen that's been critical for us, taking those data out of the silos, putting it in one place. We're also looking at automating tasks in the back office. It's not always about, we think about automation and we think of, robotics and doing things on the shop floor with machinery, but there's absolutely automation to be done in the back office as well, where some of those day-to-day processes with data entry, you take the data entry out of the equation and turn someone into a data analyst, and suddenly they're adding value into the process instead of doing non-value added tasks.
Yeah, and almost putting robotic
and
the workflows, right? Leveraging some of those to make the decisions more of a workflow and robotic process to it. Absolutely.
And Tarek, you're doing some of that office automation at Creative Foam?
Yeah, we are starting that right now, trying to find the things where, we're taking information and maybe rekeying it again. So there's redundant data entry going into Plex, or we have elements where it doesn't, it shouldn't be typed. There are ways to get that data electronically. So it's a matter of identifying the data source, where is it coming from, and then what are we doing with it and how can we do it better? So we're doing that today, starting a bit with accounting and finance, taking those documents that people are typically rekeying, but even on the shop floor where we have shipping and receiving stations, the more you can do with scanners and getting that data automated, the better off your processes will be.
Sure. Okay, excellent. Okay. Tarek, I'm curious about your journey in smart manufacturing and kind of what came first. Did you identify some projects on the floor that you thought could be made smart, whether it's through automation or some other? Did you have to invest in your MES ERP architecture before you went down this path? Kind of what was the timeline for tying, the IT part of the company into the operations on the plant floor?
Yeah, for us, we had the use case kind of demonstrated and pushed up from the bottom. So on the shop floor itself, that idea was bred of, hey, why can't we have this data integrated from our machinery in, and why can't we have some of this stuff done automatically for us, or why can't we change things, or why are we, constantly having errors that should be avoided? The idea really came from that. And once it started getting pushed up, it was more of a question of, can we do this in Plex? And then the answer is sure, how? And then it's a matter of the investment. And we started very small. We invested in a single line, a single piece of hardware for the operators and all of that, and sort of did a proof of concept to make sure that this is something we could scale out long term.
So what would you say the timeline was on that initial project before you saw, you were gathering data, you were able to analyze that data, and then you changed your process in some way to improve it? How long did it take to get, to that improvement point?
Yeah, sure. I mean, for that specific project, we're looking at 2 to 3 months from when we actually have something that we put into place, we do the training, and since that was the first one for us, I would say there was a lot of hesitation. Now, as we're kind of catching our stride and we feel comfortable and we have knowledge embedded within our DNA on how to do this right, we're moving much quicker through these projects. That first one took a lot longer to establish how are we going to do this and make sure that we do it right.
Does the Creative Foam have more than one plant location, or is it just one facility?
We have 14 facilities throughout the U.S. and Mexico.
Okay. And so they're all using Plex and they're all kind of following this path?
Correct. Yes, we are standardized on Plex as a platform, and that's kind of an approach we're taking with everything. The more we can leverage that single platform throughout the enterprise, the value is just it's astronomical how much we can do with that as being on a platform service throughout the company.
Okay. We got a couple more minutes for questions if anybody wants to ask these guys while we have them. Both of you guys talked about culture and how important that is. I'm curious how you carry that culture throughout 14 plants. Is there one champion that visits each plant and says this is how we're going to move forward, or how do you get champions within each facility to kind of steer the culture in the right direction?
Yeah, we work obviously within the corporate location. We have a great Plex team there that understands the value of this, and their goal is to go out to those facilities and then find other champions to get that messaging going of this is why we're doing it. Let's work together. It's really a partnership. It's less about you're going to abide by these rules and working together to establish what are the things we can find that are unique to you and what are the things that are common throughout our facilities. So it's a really collaborative experience where we go through and work together with those facilities and make sure we build champions, not just in management positions, but out on the shop floor that get this and understand why we're doing this and what's the value involved. So we work hand in hand with that Plex team out across the whole organization and build up those champions internally at each site.
Excellent. Mike, do you see the IT teams typically championing this type of smart manufacturing integration through ERP? Is usually the IT director who's steering that?
Yeah, I think it varies from the organization. Where is it being? Where do the flame kind of light often indicates what is the best champion for that, and it's a mixture. And some organizations, you have an approach that makes sense for that says, let's build a small core team that actually includes the people that used to do the particular operations in the plant. They become part of an implementation team that move to the next plant and on and on and on. So it's not an IT project. It's not perceived as an IT project. It's perceived as a company project, something that the operations are behind. And just finding that mix that makes sense for it, I think can vary to it. And the other side of things is, depending on the organization, maturity, size, things like that, they may have people in this particular role that often spin out of operations. They have some type of IT background or connected to IT projects in the past, but are more put into a business transformation kind of role, right? Or they tap into their continuous improvement capabilities within the organization that go to kind of install this. So to answer your question directly, sure, IT can definitely lead this if it makes sense for the organization, but often they've had to experience and face the challenges of change management and some other type of project, and tapping into those resources are often extremely successful as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Excellent. Well, I think we've reached the end of the hour here. I want to thank Mike and Tarek for a very outstanding and detailed presentation. I think the back and forth format was really good and useful. And again, I want to thank our audience for attending as well. We hope everyone found it to be a valuable experience. Once again, an archive of the program will soon be available on our website. When it's ready, you'll get an email from us. You'll be able to then review the presentation over again and perhaps share it with others within your organization. So again, thanks, Mike and Tarek, for a great presentation. Everybody, you can close your browsers now, and everybody have a great afternoon.